Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road, where my guests today include the senior pastor and founding pastor of the largest growing church in America, Grace Christian Church in Kendallville, Indiana. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Mosley.
Oh my gosh.
And there's a lot more I want to tell about you too.
Great.
And chief meteorologist of 21 Alive. He puts his finger in the air and says, "Where's the wind coming from?" and posts it on social media, and 2,000 people like it. Curtis Smith.
Yes. Good to be here, Mitch.
Thank you, Curtis. You're looking dapper as usual. And the bishop. We were together at Blackhawk Ministries for many years, and now Kelly is advancing the cause of leadership, not only at Sweetwater, but also through the Global Leadership Summit, the largest satellite in the world.
Good to see you, Mitch.
Thank
Great
you.
to be with you.
It was great. We're going to continue with our series, Love, Live, Learn the Word. And somebody asked me one time, if you were going to tell somebody to memorize maybe a dozen verses, what would you start out with? And I said, Genesis 1:1, because it all starts there. I think every human being needs to know that God is love, 1 John 4:8, and out of his love he creates. And so each person that we ever encounter, who may be outside looking in when it comes to faith, needs to know that they were created by God and designed by God. Curtis, you want to read Genesis 1:1?
Sure. Is it on the worksheet you gave us?
Yes, it is. Look at that preparation right there. Do you see that preparation?
It's great preparation. It's great. It's meticulous.
Do you have a script?
Someone once told me preparation was overrated.
Yes, he did.
Yes. I heard that somewhere.
Do you have how do you give the weather? Do you have a script?
Nope. It's all ad lib.
So how in the world do you make it different?
I never practice. I actually never prepare.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Preparation is overrated, right?
It is overrated.
But you do look at the weather.
Yeah, so the way it works. Are we really going to, you really want an explanation?
I really want to know.
All right. So the way it works is...
Because God created the weather.
Yes, he did.
I tried for years to get him to do preaching like that, but he would never do it. I always said, come on, Mitch, let's just give it a shot.
So the way it works is when I go into work, I make every map and graphic you see that night on TV. So I sit at a computer and make all those maps and graphics to explain the weather. Yeah. So as I'm making them, I kind of think in my head, this is what I want to talk about. This is what I'm trying to say with this map. And then I put them in the order I want. And I never practice. I never go through the whole spiel.
I love that.
So when I first get on the air, it's just real. It's just me having a conversation with people.
Which I love. That's
So
good.
then for news and sports, they have a teleprompter right in front of the camera and they just read a script. For me, they turn it off. And so wherever I look, I just see what you see at home, me standing in front of a map. I just know what I want to say.
What's that on? You standing in front of a map that you see a big monitor? Or?
Yeah, so I'm standing in front of a green wall that's blank and green. And then to the left, to the right, and then straight ahead where there would normally be a teleprompter is just what you see at home, me in front of a map. So wherever I look, I see me in the map. And then
So you know where to touch.
I know where to touch. It's backwards. So left is east for me, right is west.
Is up north?
I would make such a mess out of that. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's tricky at first. Up is north.
Okay, good.
Up is still north, down is still
that's
south.
great.
But yeah, the first time it takes a little while to get used to it. It's weird. It's a weird thing to point at something that's not there, to pretend you're looking at something that's not there, to find it when you're not really watching your hand. You gotta watch over there, not where you're actually pointing.
Really
So it's tricky.
cool.
But
That's
it's
awesome.
The ad-lib part is easier. I find reading scripts to be harder.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. Chris, do you wing your sermons?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, I don't wing them. But you know what? Your message is so much different than your outline. It always
Yes.
is. I mean, you know what you're going to say. You know your material. You've studied. But when you get up there, I mean, you know, different illustrations come to you, and you know, and things come to your mind that you hadn't thought of when you're preparing. And I just kind of follow the Spirit. But
Yeah, I think sometimes when you start saying it out loud, you start hearing it,
Yeah.
and it feels different. You do have another perspective that'll come out.
When you guys write sermons, do you have big chunks that are like written word for word? And then, because sometimes it feels like there are times where you're reading something, but then it feels like this might be like an ad lib section. They're like, they know a story, they know a point they want to make, but they're kind of ad libbing. Kelly,
Right.
I noticed that there were times I was in both services and it would be a little different.
It was so good people came twice.
That is awesome. They got saved twice.
It did not happen often. They're always
I think the two services always come out different. Always.
But is it like that? Do you have a structure?
some guys do
and
that
then-
differently. Some guys I know literally have a manuscript in front of them, like good morning.
Just
to-
word for word.
Word for word to the final prayer.
Wow.
And part of that is if they have multiple services, they want to know how many words is the time period that they want to be in. I know somebody really well that does that, but he puts it in outline form, so it's really easy
But I know
to
guys
read.
who have 3 bullet points on a 3x5 card.
And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, I just put thoughts
I put
in my scriptures.
I put the points, and then Kelly taught me explanation, illustration, application, substantiation if you want to have other Bible verses there. And to me, that's the easiest one to deliver in a conversation as you're looking at the crowd. And another minor thing is I think it needs to fit on one page, or you can't look down at a glance and know where you were. Because sometimes in points you're going to transition, you're going to repeat where you were, and it's kind of a challenge if you got to go back or that kind of thing. But it's amazing how little you can say in 35 minutes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Wow.
So all that because God created us and the weather.
So we're back to the Bible now?
Yeah. Genesis
After that little
1:1.
sidebar about what we all do.
Best part of what he said, though, was everywhere I look, I see me.
Yeah. Wow.
Rich Mullins had a song like that.
It's kind of divine.
It is.
Everywhere I look, I see. How would Grandpa Russell say that?
Everywhere I look, I see me.
It's a scary sight. I didn't say I liked it. All right, here we go. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Chris, why is it so important that we have a beginning and a creator? To the gospel message, I would say. Why is that so important?
Well, I think the whole process has to go back to a start. I mean, that's the way we think. You know, if you said an infinity past, nobody would,
Right.
nobody would grasp onto that.
That's
saying,
true.
from the very beginning of creation, God was in control. He was the creative influence, and everything He was doing with you in mind.
Love that.
So it gives them a spot to start from. People don't like to have vague references. They want to be able to put it together. So there has to be a start and a finish. And I think knowing that God was in control from the beginning, that they weren't a mistake, they were a part of the plan. They didn't happen. They happened on purpose for a purpose. They want to know that.
Paul writes something about you were on his mind at creation. I remember you and I preparing for a message one time and came across that verse. It was just so powerful. And to me, it kind of relates to Romans 5:8 too, that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. Like, it's nothing that we did to warrant that. That's all part of God's plan.
Yeah.
Curtis, when you look at the weather, do you see evidence of an almighty creator?
I do. It's weird. I work in an industry that, science is often in conflict with God. And I would say that most people who do what I do believe the exact opposite of what Chris was just saying, that there is a purpose and a plan behind it, and that it started accidentally. It started with some sort of big bang, and it does not have any rhyme or reason to it. Obviously, I don't believe that. And the universe, the atmosphere around us, the weather that occurs around the entire globe happens in about a 5-mile part of the atmosphere above the earth. So the first 5 miles or so is where all of our weather occurs. And if you look at it on a global
Can you say that
scale,
again? It's where?
on the first 5 miles up. So if you're going up into outer space, the atmosphere is infinite. But the first 5 miles above the earth, that's where our weather occurs. Beyond 5 miles, nothing occurs that impacts our weather.
So I'm thinking about airplanes. That's about 26,000 feet.
Yeah.
So airplanes often can fly above the weather.
Right.
When they go to
And-
33,000.
And that's why if you've ever been on a plane and you looked out, you're above a deck of clouds. Yeah, you're kind of above the weather at that point.
Okay.
So the
That's
weather
just-
occurs in that first 5 miles generally. It can fluctuate a little bit up and down, but generally. And so if you look at it on a global scale, it's all tied together. It's all trying to get back to equilibrium. If it's hot in one spot, it's going to be cold in another to offset it. If it's wet, it's going to be dry.
Really?
Yeah, the atmosphere is always trying to reach perfect equilibrium. And I think it's actually a picture of kind of our relationship with Christ. We're always trying to get to Him. We're always trying to reach perfection. We're always trying to reach the standard that He's set. We can't ever quite get there, and the earth can't ever quite get there either. And that's why we have violent storms all over the place.
So you see, after the first sin, you can see how weather indicates that it's not always going to be perfect anymore and sunny and 72 everywhere.
Yeah, but it's always in an attempt to get right.
That is one of the most
amazing.
powerful illustrations I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That is awesome. I'm going to steal that.
This is coming in, wait, no, this is coming in my book that Mitch keeps telling me to write.
Confessions of a Weatherman?
Not that one.
I love it. Oh, I love it. That is awesome. Where are you on, because I would love for you to teach us, where are you on global warming and all that?
Oh my gosh.
I know it's a very sensitive topic.
A lot of people strongly believe in it. A lot of people strongly hate it. I don't believe in global warming the way it's been presented in the media for the last 30 years or so at this point. I think that the Earth has had years recently where it's warmed up. And I do think when you add a ton of people, and we're around 7 billion now on the Earth, that we have a small impact on what's going on. But I think we overvalue ourselves. I don't think our impact is as great as we think it is. The other thing that I like to say to people who are seriously into global warming, in 1977, Time magazine, which is about as credible a news source as you can get, especially in the 70s, that was kind of the gold standard of news reporting. They did a cover story on a weather phenomena, and the 3 main points of the article were it was man-made, it was irreversible, and it was going to kill us all. You know what it was? The next ice age. They were saying that we were going through global cooling, headed towards an ice age, that it was man's fault. There was no turning back. It was too late. We were heading towards an ice age and it was going to kill us all.
Wow.
In 1977, so less than 40 years ago, 40 years to the Earth is a nanosecond to us.
Yeah.
And for us to go from one extreme to the other like that in 40 years, less than 40 years, is pretty ridiculous to me.
That is really interesting.
And so to me, what I take away from that is it's all cyclical and it all works together. It's kind of like what I was talking about with the Earth trying to get to equilibrium in one moment in time. Over time, it all evens out. It's
Micro and macro.
Yeah, micro and macro. It's all trying to even out. So we'll go through periods where we're warming up. We're going to go through periods where we're cooling down. I personally believe it's all part of God's plan. He set it in motion, and this is how it goes.
Yeah.
Wow.
But most people in my industry would probably disagree with that.
Well, I think as far as the interest of taking care of the planet, I think that's all good.
Of course.
Everybody wants to do that.
Of course.
But it's just so confusing when you didn't do very well in science in school to try to understand all this stuff. And I love getting your expert opinion because it all goes back to, in the beginning, God. I think that's just the most important thing that we all got to know. I remember the winter we just had a few years ago that was like never really got below 40 degrees very often. Is that right? It would snow and then it would melt.
Yep.
I like that winter. That was really nice.
We could have another one this year.
Really? Like that?
There's a chance. There's a very good chance we have a mild, low snow winter because of El Nino.
Really?
Yeah. El Nino typically creates for us a milder, less snowy winter. And we have a fairly strong El Nino going on.
El Nino Caballero.
I like that.
You're not an
one
expert.
is
You
right.
sound like one.
No. I'm just, I act like one.
Stayed at a Holiday Inn Express.
I did.
I
I
was just
did.
thinking that.
Nice.
And then my dad told me when he was a kid, maybe low teens, he said there was a winter similar to what we just experienced, but it was even warmer and it never snowed. And he said people were going crazy. He remembered hearing farmers saying the end is coming, Christ is coming back, this is all over. And so getting somebody who's been alive longer that can kind of tell you about those times is really interesting as well to show the macro cycle.
It's funny. And people, one thing that I love about weather is that people cannot remember it correctly. People we are so skewed in our memories. You know, you remember in first grade those 2 or 3 days where you had a mountain of snow and you couldn't go to school.
Yeah.
But you don't remember the other 25 days that you were sitting in class. You just don't remember them. And so you think, oh my gosh, it was so snowy when I was a kid. Now I can look at the records and tell you it really wasn't. And so a couple of years ago, we had that winter that was really bad. It was the coldest. It was the combination-wise of cold and snow is the worst winter we've ever had in Fort Wayne. And I would have 70 and 80-year-olds come up to me and say, boy, this is kind of like the winters we had when I was a kid. And I would have to say to them, no, it's not. It's worse than the winters when you were a kid.
Yeah.
I have numbers here. I can tell you facts. These winters are worse. These numbers are worse.
That ought to be
people
one of
don't
your
believe it.
chapters. The memory of weather is fuzzy
Or
cloudy.
Cloudy.
Do you want us to just write your own book for you right here?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Jot some of this down. Use cloudy, not fuzzy.
Yeah.
El Nino.
Gold, Mitch, gold.
Chris, why would it be significant that God is love, and out of his love he creates? Why do those two things go together?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to you having a purpose. You know, as parents, we want to have children because we love the idea of having someone to love and embrace and to care for and to raise. And, you know, that's the reason that we're a part of that creation. And
So
God,
that seed's been planted in us.
yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I think that the ultimate Father, obviously, and the greatest love is God. And the reason he did what he did for us is because he loves us. He created us because he wanted to nurture us and love us and take care of us and embrace us. And I think when people realize that God didn't just put you here to find something wrong with you to punish you, they realize that God put you here for the opportunity to raise you in his love and provide for you and care for you.
Wow. That's awesome. Purpose.
I think the first 4 words are the ball game. I really do. I think in the beginning, God. And I think for the believer, it's just huge. And I think for the unbeliever, although there's going to be debate, I get it, and some folks aren't going to buy it, but still, just for people as we think about life and this journey we're on, I think it brings preeminence. I think it brings authority. I think it brings uniqueness. In the beginning, before anything else, he was. And that's the starting point. That's the beginning point. He was here, you weren't, nothing was. After, in the beginning, God, then comes created. I think just those first 4 words establish him set apart, completely unique. And I think it's a pretty amazing verse. I'm glad you're bringing it up.
I heard Bill Hybels talk a long time ago, maybe 25 years ago, and he said, I want everybody to look at your wristwatch. He said, is there anybody here who would look at that design and think that it was an accident, an explosion in a factory, and all of a sudden it came out? And everybody says, oh, no, it's not an accident. He says, now let's slide that back a little bit and let's look at your wrist. He said, all the intricate veins and arteries in the skin and the bones and the cartilage and the joints. He said, is that an accident?
Right.
He said, it is so much more intricate than the watch, it's not even close. And so I just have trouble even conceiving the idea that this is all an accident of an explosion. Every car around us in this beautiful collection started with a design. And they took that design on paper and they made a clay mold. You can go to the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum today and you can see the clay molds that they had of an Auburn Cord or Duesenberg. Actually, 17 different makes of cars were made in Auburn, Indiana, more than Detroit at one time. And I think that's such a picture of before they breathe life and make that whole, everybody comes together in a community and they make that car, of God picking up the clay, the dust, and breathing life into it. One Hebrew scholar says that we read God breathe life into the clay or the dust, and we see he did it one time. But a Hebrew scholar, who I guess wasn't a believer, said what that means in Hebrew is a continual inhaling and exhaling. I think that is huge because in one respect it shows you God's a God of restoration from the very beginning before the first sin. And then it also shows you that my sustenance of life, Colossians 1, depends on the God of the universe.
Right.
So I just think that's powerful. Curtis, could you read from the worksheet, Learn the Word? Because I love to hear your television voice.
The foundation of believing in the one true God is recognizing him as our designer and creator. Everything starts with him. No one advised God on how to create the universe. Not one of us raised a hand and asked God to be created. He chose to bring each individual on this scene of events for a purpose. Every human being offers a unique creative expression of God to our culture.
That's good.
It's just like you said. It's just like you said. Now, Kelly, I want you to think about this. If God's our designer and sin enters in, desiring life apart from God, why does redemption become so important? To be bought back, one of your favorite words.
Yeah. Redemption is the reclaiming of the original design. Redemption is to be brought back to who you were, what you were. Yeah. In God's design, obviously there was, no sin. We were whole. Relationship with him was perfect. Relationship between Adam and Eve was perfect. Sin fractures that. Sin breaks that. Sin completely screws all that up. And the Redeemer comes and restores and makes it like it was new. So I think that's what he's wanted from the beginning, as all that unfolded, to provide a Redeemer, to be the one who could bring us back to a place of union and relationship with him that was as he designed.
So the pursuit of equilibrium in the Earth's atmosphere and weather is also going on inside each one of us. Would that be right, Chris?
Yeah.
You've pastored hundreds, if not thousands of people. You've prayed with many to surrender their lives to Christ. Do you see that fight inside of them to get back to equilibrium, to get back to the design of the designer?
Oh, yeah, I mean, as soon as someone believes, they sense an imbalance. This is what I was taught, but this isn't what I'm feeling. This is what I'm told to do. This is what I'm told to want, but this isn't what I'm feeling. And so there's this desire for them to get back to where they started from. I mean, you use the illustration of the car, has a designer. If something goes wrong in the process, they always say, well, let's go back to the vision of the designer and see why this isn't working to design.
Right.
And I think that the same thing when our lives fall apart because of sin. When we accept Christ, there's still so many of those components in our life that have to be weeded out, through walking closer to God and understanding the Word. And the Word is our way of getting back to the beginning, to the designer, what He wanted for us. And I think that hunger to be there is what makes us pursue that.
How about in your own life?
Wow.
Talk about how you are out of equilibrium and then how you sense that in your own personal story.
Well, you know my story. I was raised by a pastor, but I wanted nothing to do with it. I mean, I was, deeply involved in alcohol and drugs and violence and things like that. And it just got to a point when nothing made sense anymore. I just couldn't see the goal of life to be what I was pursuing, because everything that I pursued had no satisfaction in it. And so when I looked around myself and woke up and said, is this really what I'm going to do the rest of my life? Then my wife becomes a Christian. I saw this peace and joy in her, and it made me mad. So I'm like going, who are you to get all happy? You know what I mean? I'm doing the stuff that's supposed to make people happy. I'm the life of the party. I'm supposed to be the one that's happy, and here you are all happy on me. And so the joy and the contentment she had, I never had it. And every time I woke up, no matter what happened the night before, I still didn't have it. So I knew that there was something greater and I didn't have it. And I knew the avenue she took to get it, and that's the avenue I followed.
Did you have a sneaky suspicion or a quiet little voice all those years sort of telling you were missing the design?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I was just curious.
For sure. I used to pray even when I was like that.
Yeah.
Because my grandma used to tell me that.
Dealing in drugs, you're praying?
Yeah. I remember my grandma always told me this, which I don't, theologically I can't prove it correct, but it worked. She told me that, God's not going to let a praying man die. And, I don't know that I can ever prove that precept, but the one thing it did was it made me think, maybe if I pray, He'll give me a few more days to figure this out. Because I always knew there was a God. I always knew
That's interesting.
that I wanted to have a relationship with Him, but what I was seeing out of the believers around me was not the relationship I wanted. Because they were judgmental.
It was
and they
religious.
Were, they were always talking about people, and they were constantly, telling how terrible everybody was and the judgment of God. You know, like I said, when I was 22, I got saved when I was 22. And up to that point, the only two things I knew was that there was a hell and I was going. I didn't know anything about the grace and mercy of God, so.
I just think that's a powerful illustration of what you and I saw. You know, hundreds of times when people would come to faith, we would see that Romans 1 principle where they just know. I mean, God just, in different ways, at different levels, no matter who you are, what you've been doing, somewhere down deep inside, in a moment of absolute honesty, you're going to admit you know that there is right, that there is truth, that He is there. And wow, that's a powerful example.
We see it in creation.
Yeah.
We see it in our circumstances.
Yep.
And we see Him through that conscience that we're
Conscience,
talking about.
yep.
It's so vividly clear. Curtis, could you read the last paragraph of the worksheet for us?
Gotta stop putting the worksheet away. Live the Word. How has God uniquely designed you to bring His restoration to our world?
Ooh.
Apply the Word to your life by thanking God for creating you and this incredible planet for you to enjoy. Soak in the beauty of God's creation, the sky, the animals, trees, sunshine, stars, moon, mountains, rivers, lakes, oceans, beaches, and all the people with their creative ingenuity. Each day, ask God to create a new beginning for you, seeking His unique design for your life.
And that's our prayer for you, is that you would memorize Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And like Kelly said, man, those first 4 words are the most significant. In the beginning, God. You were designed by the designer of the universe for a purpose, like Chris said. And like Curtis has shared, your body, your soul, your spirit, it's fighting for an equilibrium, just like the atmosphere and our weather. And that fight for an equilibrium is to come to the center of the universe in Christ, the Creator, the Sustainer, the Savior, the Lord. He is holding it all together, Paul writes in Colossians 1, and He is drawing you to Himself right now. And so we just ask that you bend the knees of your heart and you say to God, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I confess that I've desired life apart from your design. I repent. I see it differently. I turn from being Lord of my own life, my own designer and restorer. And by grace through faith, God's riches at Christ's expense, I commit my life to you as my Savior and Lord. And He will make you new, and He will change your heart, and He will bring you joy, and you will find your ultimate value in bringing the designer's joy to others.